Jill on the mic. It's about to get real. Keep it live, that's right. From Pennsylvania to across the globe, it's time for the Steelers All-Star Show.
Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by my co-host, Nick. Nick, how are you doing on this tinfoil hat Monday?
It is a tinfoil hat Monday, James. For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube, on YouTube, I have a tinfoil hat on right now, and I surprised James with it because when we were talking before the show, I did not have this on. But you know, it's a tinfoil hat Monday. We will be breaking down this game, I'm sure, as it goes. But I have never been more convinced that there is not collusion in the NFL, and it's not to the extent, to be clear. I don't think it's scripted all the way down to the Super Bowl. Who knows? Maybe it is. But when the Sunday night matchup to decide the division gets flexed before the result of the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game is over, I start to put one of these on and be a little bit suspicious. But James, how are you on this tinfoil hat Monday? And I'll switch to my regular Steelers hat now.
I'm with you on it, man. Multiple suspicious things throughout the course of this game. We were saying it during the Lions game that the NFL really needed this Week 18 game to matter because so many positions have already been decided. We're getting to the final week of the regular season here. There's only 2 games with any kind of playoff implications at all. And had Pittsburgh defeated Cleveland, there would have only been one, and it would have been the Tampa Bay game. I think it's Tampa Bay versus the Panthers. not the biggest marquee matchup there. So they really needed the Steelers-Ravens game to matter and be important and to be able to flex it to a featured time slot of the Sunday night game, which is exactly what it's going to be now. But we're going to break that all down for you guys on this episode that's going to be full of tinfoil hat theories and, unfortunately, some blatantly bad calls, too. And we're going to cover all that. But before we get into it too far, we did have some transactions. Prior to the game, the Steelers did elevate both Deshaun Jameson from the practice squad. He's a nickel corner, plays some special teams as well. And then offensive tackle Jack Driscoll was also elevated for the game. Again, this is due to the lack of depth at the offensive tackle position, while we still have some guys out injured right now. Inactives for the game were Will Howard, again, the emergency number 3 quarterback. Calvin Austin with the hamstring. Caleb Johnson was a healthy scratch. Brandon Eccles with his groin injury. James Pierre with his calf injury. Isaac Seumalo with his tricep injury. And TJ Watt still recovering from the lung. And they probably just figured they didn't need him in order to beat the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, you thought that going into the game, and it turns out to be a different result. But, you know, I'm happy to not bring TJ back early. If he can make it back this week, especially against the Ravens, when now it matters, because it's at this point, in hindsight of the Browns game, it's do or die. It's win or you're out at this point. So to have TJ rested up, because these were both divisional games, the one that we're looking forward to that we'll cover on the preview show and the one that we're covering now on this post-game show are both divisional matchups, and those are known to be attrition games. And we'll talk about that as we get into the game too. But to put TJ out there, especially if he wasn't ready, because if he's not ready, I don't want him playing against the Ravens either, because if we do win against the Ravens, which I'm hoping that we do, and we go into the playoffs, you're going to want him for that playoff run if he's ready. If he's not ready, you're not going to want to have him re-aggravate a collapsed lung, especially among injuries. That's not one you want to have re-occur. So to have him out against in a game that, not that it didn't matter, but that didn't decide your fate 100%, is totally fine by me. I wouldn't have wanted him in this game.
Yeah, the only way I would have been cool with him playing in this game is if there was a 0% chance of aggravating that injury. So if an extra week makes him that much healthier, good. Honestly, this team is really, really banged up right now, and they need TJ Watt for this playoff run. It's getting to the point where you're down so many starters that you're having a tough time putting together offensive drives. You're having a tough time generating pass rush outside of Alex Highsmith and Cam Hayward most games. So there's a lot that has to be improved for this team to be taken serious. And the playoffs start right now. Let's be real. This game versus the Ravens is a playoff game because if you lose it, you don't go into the playoffs. If you win it, you do get into the playoffs. And you get a home game. So playoffs start a week early for Pittsburgh. In that outside linebacker room, man, they really seriously need TJ back because you're just not getting any production out of that room outside of Alex Highsmith right now. Nick Herbig, I kind of felt like this was a reoccurring thing with Herbig. He always starts the season off well and middle of the season cools off a little bit, and then by the end of the year, he's giving you nothing. He hasn't had a sack since November 16th. Now, granted, he didn't play last week because of the hamstring injury, but he started this game and recorded 0 stats other than 1 deflected pass, and that was actually a dropped pick 6. It would have been an easy run-in for a touchdown. Sawyer gave you a little bit in this game. He had a real nice interception and played well against the run as well. But I was like, I wonder, is this really a thing? Yeah, last year we got 1 sack out of Nick Herbig in the entire month of December. His rookie year, 1 sack in the entire month of December. Like, he's just not doing well once the weather turns cold. And maybe that's all it is because he's a Hawaiian native and just doesn't like playing in the cold, hasn't accustomed to it yet. I don't know. But it's got to be more than Alex Highsmith. Even with it just being that really in this game where it was Alex and Cam and not a whole lot from many other guys, you still pretty much shut down the Cleveland Browns offense. They had 2 successful drives in the first quarter, and outside of that, not really at all.
Yeah.
And let's be real about it. The only touchdown that they scored in this game looked like a punt, and Kyle Duggar just misplayed it horribly. Just completely lost the ball, ran past the receiver before he caught the ball, and then never even made it back to down him before he rolled into the end zone, and he was already injured in the play. Like, this man had to stop to catch the ball. That's how poorly underthrown it was. It was wobbling around like it looked like an onside kick in the midair. Like, it was a horribly thrown football, and Duggar's the only one that could have made a play on it, and he just never made a play on the ball. Never even tried to make a play on the ball, as if he had no idea the ball was coming.
Yeah, it looked like a high school football team out there for a minute, I'm not going to lie. And it wasn't that the whole team was off. It was just Duggar completely losing the football, which you can't have happen in that instance. And now he did get an interception later in this game. So he kind of brought it back together. But that play doesn't happen if Duggar's even slightly aware of where the football is. Because if he bats that away, or easily could have intercepted it if he just was watching where the ball was, because Fannin kind of caught it as he was readjusting basically on the ground.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really that touchdown should never have happened. And then the game at that point is 6-6. Well, not necessarily. You can't say they wouldn't have scored, but if Duggar intercepts it there, which he very well should have,
a field goal though.
Right? But if Duggar could have intercepted it instead of batted it away, because if he had basically any awareness of where the ball was, it should have been a very catchable ball for him too, because it basically fell in Fannin's lap as he's. I don't know if he was quite on the ground or if he was going to the ground, but he did, like you said, have to come back to it a bit. So if Duggar is just situationally aware of where the football is, or where the guy is that he's supposed to be guarding in that instant.
Yeah. If you can't find the ball, cover his face.
Exactly.
Get in front of him and put your hands up, and you probably have it bounce off the back of your hands. But to just run right by him like that was just infuriating. And it's just kind of a summary of certain things on this season, right? If Deshaun Elliott's healthy, he makes that play 10 out of 10 times. And I feel like, honestly, Kyle Duggar, if you give him 10 attempts at that same exact scenario, he probably either breaks it up or picks it off 9 out of 10 times. And it's just the one fluke time where he just can't figure out where the ball is.
Yeah. Yeah, just a frustrating thing to see happen when you feel like the game could have been won for multiple reasons, but like just that one play that was so seemingly simple, and I'm not saying professional football is simple, but when you have a lame duck like that and you're a professional athlete, it should be simple.
Mhm.
And it ends up going the complete opposite way in almost shocking fashion.
Yeah.
So
And
just a
puts you
very
down
poor
10-0
play.
too.
Yeah.
Like all momentum was in favor of the Browns. Now Pittsburgh was able to take it back after that and start getting some scoring drives together, start getting some field goals on the board there. But they just really couldn't get going on offense. And I guess let's kick over there before I go off too bad on. It's basically two bad defensive plays, and the rest of the game they played pretty well. And it wasn't even like it was really bad plays. It was just they didn't take advantage of the opportunity. You should have picked off Shador Sanders 4 times in this game, and you only got him twice.
Yeah.
So those not taking advantage of those turnover opportunities are just devastating in a close, low-scoring game like this. But similar on the opposite side with the offense, right? They just from the get-go seemed like, to me, and I mentioned it in our group chat, it seemed like they were so worried about making sure that Myles Garrett did not get that sack in this game that they just didn't get into a rhythm, that a lot of things were rushed, hurried. You're not going through your progressions when you're throwing the ball. It's, throw to the first target, whether he's open or not. And just a lot of just not smooth offense. And I feel like partially, again, you had real bad luck on the injury front. Early in this game, you get 2 quick passes to Darnell Washington. Looks like he's going to be a factor in the game, getting some yards after catch on it, and then breaks his arm on the second catch. And this is like the first quarter. Down.
Yeah.
Out for the rest of the game. And he was going to be the guy that was supposed to help double team and chip on Myles Garrett all day long. And he's injured before you can even get into that part of the plan. Which then takes your 2 top receivers remaining, because you're down DK Metcalf, you're down Calvin Austin. Your next 2 best receivers are Pat Freiermuth and Kenny Gainwell. Guess who was chipping Myles Garrett all game long?
Kenny Gainwell.
And Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah.
Which means they're not available as a target because they're over there trying to take away the number 1 pass rusher. So, you have to chip Myles Garrett. You can't leave him one-on-one. I get that, but man, you can't have your best targets doing it.
Yeah. It also infuriated me too, because the Darnell injury cost us a timeout, which I don't think it should have. I think it should have been an injury timeout. But that for some reason it didn't happen that way, and we end up having to call one of ours because Aaron has to substitute and all that kind of stuff. Which it just so many things strange about both the officiating and the way certain plays happened and the way certain moments went down. No calls and weird calls. And I don't for a minute mean to say that all the no calls or weird calls were against the Steelers. There was that one drive where there were 2 back-to-back penalties. The pick that was called on MVS, which was bogus. He was getting out of the way actively as the guy was running towards him.
And there was no actual contact. You can't have offensive pass interference when there's no contact made with the defender. A horrible call, and the in-game commentators called it out and said that's absolutely not pass interference.
And then I believe there was a taunting call thereafter that was somewhat questionable as well on the Browns. So, I mean, it's just an example of the officiating was just bogus because they wanted the game to be close. They wanted it to be, and this is all speculation. I don't have any actual proof of this, but this is the way it feels watching the game. It feels like, excuse me, the NFL wanted this game to be closer. They wanted it to be Ravens, Steelers to mean something because they, again, only the Tampa Bay game and everything else. And then they flexed it again before the game was even over to be like, hey, guess what, guys? Yeah. Surprise, shocker, this game means something, and now we're drumming up engagement, and it's the Sunday night game, so more people are going to watch it. So sometimes the business aspect of things, I think, plays into it a little too much. I think sometimes the refs might be told to make that way. And obviously they can't control everything, but they can certainly influence in a way that would make it more highly probable.
Yeah.
So it's just strange.
And a couple other examples while we're on the topic. We had a false start called on number 52 on the offense.
Does not exist.
Yeah. 52 is a retired jersey number. That was Mike Webster's number in the 70s. Nobody's worn it since. You're not allowed to. Like, there is no 52 on the field for the Steelers, and whoever 52 was had a false start. It seems as though they were attempting to try to call it on Zach Frazier, which is ridiculous. Again, they showed that on a replay as well, and he did not false start. There was also a 3rd and 1 where they called Dylan Cook for a false start, where he moved maybe a millisecond before the snap. The naked eye cannot pick up on that. The only way he could catch that he moved early is by an instant replay being broken down frame by frame. And then the Frazier penalty, right? That backed them up 5 yards, and then they missed a 54-yard field goal right after that. The 3rd and 1 backs them up. The Dylan Cook false start was on 3rd and 1, backs them up to 3rd and 6. And they end up turning the ball over on downs, going for it on 4th and 1 on that drive. And that was when they bombed it deep to Scotty Miller for no good reason.
Questionable play calling.
On 4th and 1.
And then the other one I want to point out is the Cam Hayward roughing the passer call.
Yeah.
Number one, in my opinion, roughing the passer should not be what it is right now. Quarterbacks are far too protected. I understand we want to protect them. But there has to be a point where the defender is allowed to make a play. Cam is in the process of tackling Shedeur as he throws that ball. That should not in any way, shape, or form. I don't care if his weight lands on him. He even puts his arms up at the end of the play, and they still call it on him.
Yeah.
Defenders have to be able to tackle the ball. I don't know if anyone who listens to us listens to the Pat McAfee show, but they had their one Christmas wish for football, and J.J. Watts was they send all the roughing the passer plays to him for review, and he says whether it's roughing the passer or not. I like that idea. But, it's just a frustrating thing to see all these bogus calls be called. It was terrible officiating.
Yeah.
And then to your receiver point, why are we targeting Marquez Valdez-Scantling 3 times on the final drive when we're in the goal line? Why is he also the second most effective but also targeted guy in this? Like, we targeted –
most targeted guy in this game. He had 9 targets on only 3 catches,
and why is Scotty Miller second? Like, I love Scotty. He was doing good things. But your number 1 receiver right now can and should be Kenneth Gainwell, because DK is out. Calvin Austin is out. Darnell Washington is now injured. I understand giving it to Pat Freiermuth, but if he's chipping, give it to Gainwell. He's been your most effective receiver this whole time. And I don't know who all has seen it, but there's multiple people out there posting how Gainwell, after chipping Garrett, was wide open on the final play where, again, should have been a PI call there, but that's another story. And had a shot. Now, does he get into the end zone? Maybe not, because there's 2 defenders that would have had a chance to try to hit him. But instead of
going – it looked like he would have, though.
Right. It looked like he had at least a shot to get in. And he's been your most productive receiver. He's the leading receiver on the team, even with DK on the field. So it's just a infuriating play calling because, as you mentioned, it seemed like they were more concerned about keeping Garrett from getting the sack record, which that's the one positive I'll take out of this game, is that if he does get it this year, which very possible next week, but at least it won't be against us, because then they can't. The Browns fans can't hold that over our head, but they'll still hold this over us, which is.
And it will have taken him 17 games as to where the other 2 did it in 16. Technically, TJ did it in 15 because he got hurt on the first play of a game and missed the entire rest of that game. So he technically only played 15 games that year. But, yeah, I can't agree with you more on the Cam Hayward thing. He landed on his own shoulder with half of his body on Shedeur and half of his body on the ground. He didn't drive him into the ground, which is the one thing you're not allowed to do. And he didn't land with all his weight on him, which is the other thing you're not allowed to do. Didn't hit him late, didn't hit him in the head. It didn't qualify for a roughing the passer in any way. The final 3 passes going to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I just want to talk about all 3 of them real quick because, again, very frustrating. Second down, Valdez-Scantling very clearly was expected to run a slant pattern by Aaron Rodgers, and he ran it out instead. falls incomplete, nowhere near anyone. Third down, again, it's a slant called. Marquez Valdez-Scantling runs into the defender and decides, I don't want to keep on running my route, and stops. Rodgers throws it where he was supposed to go. Had he continued running that pattern, it would have at the bare minimum been pass interference because the defender was all over him. They would have been forced to throw the flag because he was all over him, and because the ball didn't get thrown in the area, or it wasn't in the air when the contact was happening, because he stopped on his route and tried to go somewhere else instead. I mean, Rodgers throws balls like that sometimes knowing he's going to get the penalty, or at least should. He knows that if he continues running that pattern through that defender like that, it forces contact and forces a referee to make a decision. And if they don't call it on that, and then you get the contact that you got on fourth down, and they don't call pass interference on back-to-back, it looks insanely blatant. They would have been forced to throw that penalty on the last one because he didn't play the ball. He was face-to-face with the defender, which the only way you're allowed to do that is if you don't make contact with the receiver, and he was all over him. He was pulling his left arm down and then holding on to his right arm. Like, every single part of that was pass interference and not called. So just infuriating. And then the flip side of this, too, is, man, it's tough when you're part of an over-emotional fan base. And this fan base has just been screaming all year long about quit throwing the check down. Some of our own teammates here on Steelers by the Lake, I'm so sick of the check downs. If you think the players and coaching staff don't hear that when everyone's saying it, you're wrong. It gets back to them. So when the game's on the line, do you think he's looking for the check down or throwing it into the end zone to try to make the play? So part of that is on us for being whiny fans.
Yeah.
You got to
There's no way around it.
Play. If you've got something constructive to say it. But just whining about something because you don't like the end result without actually breaking down the play is counterproductive, and it does have a negative effect on the field. Yeah.
And I want to keep it in this receiver room here for a minute, because the other thing that frustrates me
just don't drop it, because that's all they do apparently.
Apparently. Very true. The other thing that frustrates me is Freiermuth, Smith, and Thielen being equal in targets.
Yeah.
When Freiermuth, I understand he's chipping, and I understand that he's out there, but he's not chipping on every play. Gainwell's chipping on some. So when I want them to have more targets, because Muth is reliable. Now, granted, he did drop 2 in this game, or perhaps they just weren't as catchable, 2 of his 5 targets. But, when you got a guy out there who's a reliable target, who can muscle through guys, who can make things happen, and you're targeting MVS and Scotty Miller more. Now, Muth in his 3 targets outpaced everyone. He outproduced on less receptions, on the same amount of receptions, but on less targets. So you've got a guy who's out there getting all the targets, the same amount of receptions, and is producing less, and you're still targeting that guy. And I understand a couple of those were in garbage. 3 of those were end of the game targets, but you've been off page with him twice. You almost got intercepted because he stopped on one of the plays, and you're still going to that guy as opposed to the guy who gave you 63 yards on 2 targets instead of 21. That make sense to me, for number one. And then for number 2, we've been hearing all week about how excited we are to have some of these guys get an opportunity with DK out, with Calvin out. Why on God's green earth? Maybe, James, you have the answer for me. I doubt you do. But why on God's green earth is Roman Wilson playing 9 snaps and getting 0 targets? He's always been a no block, no rock kind of guy. You think at the very least he could be out there to throw a chip at Myles Garrett and let Freiermuth run a route or something, or Gainwell do something different for a play. Now, maybe you don't want the inexperienced wide receiver chipping, but it's a chip. He's not out there to block the guy for the whole rep. So why not give the young guy who's searching for a chance, who you said you wanted to give a chance, a shot in this game? I don't understand why he's only getting 9 snaps, especially when Marquez Valdez-Scantling is out there getting 9 targets to like Thielen's 5. Thielen was also not as productive, I suppose, but also not targeted nearly as much as Valdez-Scantling was. So it's just a frustrating thing to see. And I understand that he's a guy that Rodgers has been with, but clearly they were not on the same page in this game. So I know you want that comfort level, but when you see them not clicking, the definition of insanity is putting the same thing out there and hoping for different results. So why are we putting the same thing out there and hoping for different results?
Yeah, I'm optimistic that after this game, Roman has a better shot at getting more reps next week just because of how bad things turned out with the other guys. I get season on the line and maybe Rodgers saying, hey, give me the vets out there. I know that they know where they're supposed to be. They're going to do the right thing. Well, guess what? Marquez Valdez-Scantling did not do the right things. He was running wrong routes. He was missing blocking assignments. There was a tight end screen they threw to Jonnu late in the game where Valdez-Scantling he's the only one there to block. And in that situation where it's a very quick screen play, if you're the only blocker, you can't take any steps downfield. It has to be immediately over to your responsibility. He took a step downfield, and while he's taking that step downfield, guess what? The defender that's opposite Jonnu Smith is already charging him. So you're already multiple steps behind. And Jonnu can't really come back to the ball. I had it suggested to me that he should have come back to the ball on that play. If he comes back to the ball, he's going towards all the defenders. Screenplays don't work when you come back to the line of scrimmage like that because guess what? There's 7 guys waiting for you there. You have to keep it on the outside. That's the only way those work. So Valdez-Scantling blowing his assignments, blocking, not running the right routes, giving up on routes, not being able to win 50-50 balls. You got to give somebody else a shot. I wasn't any more impressed with Scotty Miller than I was him. It looks worse than it is because he did get that one catch on the right sideline for about 20 yards where they called the offensive pass interference where absolutely no contact was made with the defender. So that comes off of his board. It should have been another catch for another 20 yards. Then he's looking at 4 for 45, and it looks like a much better contribution from Scotty. And we're talking about him maybe being somebody that should be used more in this final game. But instead, just not a significant impact from any of these veteran wide receivers. And I couldn't be more frustrated than to see Pat Freiermuth finally get a chance to do something receiving near the end of the game. He's the sole reason that you're down there getting an opportunity to take shots into the end zone, and then none of those passes go to him in the final 4 plays.
Yeah.
Your biggest, tallest, best contested catch guy, your most sure hands outside of Kenny Gainwell, like that's your best hands is Gainwell and Freiermuth. Everybody knows it. Those two catch everything thrown their way basically, and you don't give any opportunities to them. So yeah, just frustrating. It's like they say, dance with the one who brung you. Well, guess what? Pat brought you the whole way down the field. Dance with them and dance with them into the end zone. Please, you probably get a touchdown there if one of those 3 passes goes to him at the end of the game instead of Marquez.
Yeah, absolutely. The two of his 3 completions came on that final drive.
Yeah. And
Why?
It was yards, right?
Yeah,
like
29 on the first, 11.
Yeah. That's 40 yards.
Yep.
And they started at the 35 on that drive.
Yeah. And I will give a little credit to Scotty Miller. He had the other 15-yard grab on that play. And I was actually not thinking he was the hero of the game, but I was pleased with his production is the word I'm going to use. He goes out there, and when he needs to make a play, he does. And he had I think he had a decent return in this game as well at one point.
Yeah, the best punt return on the year, yes.
Yeah, so just like Scotty wasn't elite, but he was reliable and dependable is the word I was more looking for to describe him. He was able to be used in a way that was productive and that was reliable and consistent. He didn't have, excuse me, any huge splash plays. Other than, like, again, a 15-yarder wouldn't really, in my opinion, be a splash play. But to go out there and to be able to say, I need you to go and get this ball, and obviously the one deep ball on 4th and 1 he doesn't get, but that play shouldn't have been called in the first place. So I'm going to let Scotty go on that one, because that shouldn't have been happening. He's not a contested ball guy.
And that's just not the option he should have gone with on that play. You know, the play call isn't necessarily a bad thing, as much as that's not the receiver to go to on that play.
Right.
You send that guy deep to try to draw 2 people away from everyone else. And from what I understand on the play, Adam Thielen kind of popped open on that one. So if he goes underneath Adam Thielen, it's probably an extremely ezy conversion.
And just to land the initial plane that I started to, because my brain likes to tangent sideways off of what I was actually talking about. But to only target Pat Fryer, 2 of his 3 receptions came on the final drive of this game. That should not be happening. I understand we've been talking. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I know he was chipping. I don't care. Like, the point of a chip is to give a little bit of assistance to the offensive line. You're not a full-on blocker. You're bumping into the guy, and then you're still going. That should be a read. I know we were focused on keeping Garrett from the sack record. I'm glad that we did. I wish we had won the game. But I feel like Aaron was so jittery about getting sacked, and he did get sacked twice in this game, not by Garrett, but did get sacked twice. I feel like he was so jittery, and I feel like the whole offensive line was jittery worrying about Garrett, because there were multiple bad snaps, one of them on one of Boswell's successful field goals. Luckily, Waitman was able to corral it and bring it down, and Boswell puts it through the uprights. But there were some fumbles that I think were caused by bad snaps, and it's just not because Dylan Cook fell on one. Rogers fumbled a time or two. Looks like it was Rogers fumbled, Valdez-Scantling fumbled and recovered his own, and then
Warren fumbled early on, right?
Jalen Warren fumbled as well
on the first drive.
Yeah, and I think that one got lost, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think we recovered that one.
We did. Recovered by John Smith.
Yeah, that was the drive that was 3 runs in a row and then punt the very first drive.
So maybe only 2 bad snaps, but there could have also been some that were just like a little askew that I missed that didn't result in a fumble or anything along those lines, but that did make the jitters seemed to be impacting us in this game, which is a terrible thing to say when you're facing the 3-12 at that point Cleveland Browns. But it just seemed like they were so off of their game because they weren't focused on playing Steeler football. They were focused on preventing Brown football.
Mm-hmm. And I felt like at a certain point in time, too, not that you want to see opponents get injured, but at a certain point in time in the first half of this game, we saw the star middle linebacker for the Browns, Carson Schweschinger, injure a thigh muscle. And he was out there limping around and falling down when he tried to cut. And they didn't attack the middle of the field like they needed to when that happened. They needed to just start sending people over the middle, running backs, tight ends, anybody, and do it where it's like a double move stuff, right? Get him going one way and then force him to attempt to cut on that bad leg. He would not be able to do it. He was falling trying to cover people, and they only targeted him once shortly after that. And I feel like it's just a missed opportunity. If the guy's not going to come out of the game, that's on him. That's on the Browns coaching staff for not pulling him out of the game and putting somebody else in. But not attacking that as a weakness when he's out there hobbling around, barely being able to walk, is just not taking advantage of an opportunity.
Yeah, and the one time that they did target him, it worked. So you figure
it sure did.
That they should have at least made note of it. I don't know if they just didn't realize he was injured, but you figure they have to when you see him out there. I mean, I know we get an eagle-eye view, but you figure they still see what's on the field. So it's frustrating, like you said, to see them not target it more, especially when it worked the one time they did.
Yeah, not enough. Now, some bright spots from this game and the running game is part of that, right? Jalen Warren, other than his fumble, which was recovered, ran the ball very well. 12 carries, 64 yards, 5.3 yard average on the day. I thought Jalen was very effective running the ball in this game. Connor Hayward with that awesome fake Spartan dive where you basically ran it off the right side, goes for 29 yards on the play.
Making a case to remain on the roster. He's a fullback, not a tight end. I'll say it as long as I draw breath.
Honestly, like the last few weeks, they've used him a little bit as a lead blocker, as a fullback, and he hasn't looked bad doing it. So maybe there's some hope for him in the future still after all here. Gainwell, not as effective as he has been in the past running the ball in this game. Only 26 yards on 7 carries, so a little under 4 yards a carry. John, who got a couple carries again in this game and again looked good doing so. The part that stinks is that, again, we've talked about this a bunch of times already on today's show with Gainwell and Freiermuth not being used enough. The way Pittsburgh decided to approach this, as far as the chips, I agree with, because in the past I've seen them just throw a shoulder and it's not enough, and sometimes it screws things up for the offensive lineman. So in this game, instead of just chipping, they were asking the first guy, whether it was Gainwell or Freiermuth, which 95% of the time it was one of the two of them, to go in there and fully engage him and try to hold him for a second or two. So that almost completely takes them out of the possibility for being a target, which is why I just wanted to be somebody else. But that's the problem when Darnell goes down. You can't really ask Jonnu Smith to do it. He's not a good blocker. And that's a really bad assignment for Connor Hayward, who has struggled with bigger guys. When he's running full speed into somebody, he does a pretty good job blocking. But putting him up against the 275-pound Myles Garrett is just probably not even going to slow him down. And they were trying to avoid using him out there in this game, and I get it because we've talked about it before. He's just not a mismatch in your favor most times. Yeah, that Darnell Washington injury, man, I feel like it just completely derailed their plans, because I feel like it would have been going to Freiermuth and Gainwell a ton in this game, because Washington would have gotten to the point where you would have seen Myles Garrett switching sides. He would have lined up on one side, seen Darnell Washington, and then gone and switched over to the other side. We've seen him do it in the past. He would have started doing it because he wouldn't have had any progress going against Darnell. And that's the frustrating thing to me, is that this game was it was clunky, it was ineffective, it wasn't smooth on offense at all, and a large portion of it was because of injuries and suspension. Just
Steelers front office.
Yeah, the backup wide receivers sucked in this game. They just didn't give you much of anything, and you have to feel like DK would have given you more than that. Calvin Austin probably would have popped open a time or two because of how fast he is. And I know they wouldn't have forced that ball 3 times to Calvin Austin in the end zone, so they probably would have forced it 3 times to DK. Guess what? DK would have got one of them.
Yeah.
He would have run the correct routes. He would have ran through the defender on that second pass and caught it on that one, and he would have beat him on the 50-50 ball probably too. So, yeah, it's tough, because if you're being realistic about it, injuries cost Pittsburgh this game.
Yeah.
It's as much on injuries as it is on referees. And, like we talk about it all the time, the expectation in Pittsburgh and from Mike Tomlin is that the backup plays as good as the starters. They just didn't in this game.
Yeah.
The backups did not have a good game.
And I don't want to pin it entirely on the refs either. We've already alluded to it in this conversation as well. Just the play calling did not make sense a number of times as well. Like the 4th and 1 deep shot to Scotty Miller is not a good play call. And I to also key this back into rushing, as we were talking about rushing. Aaron did have the 1 rush for 6 yards, slid a little too early, which led to that 4th and 1. If he was able to get about another yard, we would have not been in a 4th and 1 situation there, and we might have had a different result at the end of that drive. But yeah, just watching some of the play calls, and I understand that either Gainwell or Freiermuth is engaged on either of those plays, but then the other one shouldn't be, and so you figure that one of them should have been getting a couple more targets on some of those plays.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just It's just kind of frustrating because I think you're right about Darnell. And I was about to say, Pittsburgh front office, if you're listening, extend that man yesterday. I love Darnell. I can't say enough about him. I was so excited when we got him in the draft because I didn't think he was going to be there. I think we got him in like the third round.
Yeah, I think so.
But he was a draft darling of mine out of Georgia. They called him the pterodactyl back then because of his long wingspan, and I think it still fits. He's got the long arms. He's got the big body. He's able to do offensive lineman things as a tight end who can still move as a tight end, which is just such a asset to the team. So prayers up for Darnell on that broken arm. I know it's going to take some time to heal. We'll be missing you until you get back, that's for sure. But we don't want you to rush back. We want you to heal up because we'll need you for next season for sure too.
And you have to, if I know this seems far-fetched at this point, but if Pittsburgh's able to pull off the win versus the Ravens this upcoming weekend and make a little bit of a run, a broken bone, especially in your arm, a lot of times can be a 4 to 6 week thing. If Pittsburgh can make it, I think he could come back for the Super Bowl. Now, I know that seems really far-fetched after watching him lose to the Browns, but let's not lose sight of the fact that they won 3 in a row that nobody expected them to win right before that.
Against teams that were hot, and also this is a division game. I know we've probably talked about it on the show a million times, and everybody that has a football podcast probably talked about it at least once in the length of their show. Divisional games are always different. They're always more difficult, especially when you're going into the division rival's house.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh has struggled with there ever since struggled to win there ever since Ben Roethlisberger left. We haven't. And obviously there was far more poor quarterback play for the more recent years, but this also was a game without a lot of starters. Hopefully we can get Calvin Austin back next week to have that speed element to give us another element to the offense to be able to be a little bit more dynamic. It's going to be hard without Darnell, obviously, but you can at least prepare for that with a full week of preparation because you don't ever prepare for one of your primary blockers and receivers and yak guys who you were more likely than not planning to rely heavily on in this game with the guys out that are out going down within the first quarter and then having to re-scheme the whole thing. And the defense, I don't know if we want to shift over to that, but other than that touchdown to Fannin and a couple other times early on, we're playing pretty well to start this game, holding the Browns to 13 points. And I mean, I know it's still the Browns, but they've been able to put up points with now, to be fair, they're down a lot of those guys that were putting up those points, with Judkins having broken his leg, Njoku being out, Fannin getting taken out of the game pretty early as well. But to still hold them to so few points is nothing to turn your nose up at. They're not an elite team, but divisional games in a home or in a away setting are not easy to hold an opposing offense to low numbers to. So I don't want to sing the praises of the Browns too well because their offense wasn't elite and they got some fluky stuff. But that even speaks even more to what our defense was doing. And against the Ravens, who, if Lamar's still out next week, are going to have to rely heavily on Derrick Henry, we didn't do too bad against the run game. It was more the pass game that really kind of shot us in the foot here. And to be able to continually put out good rushing defense product is encouraging against a divisional opponent we'll be facing at home, who might have to rely pretty heavily on their star running back to win them the game.
Yeah, let's be realistic. The Browns' best part of their offense has been rushing the ball this season. They only had 78 yards rushing, averaged 3.1 yards per carry, and it's a little bit skewed in the positive manner for them with Shador scrambling for 5 yards a carry. He also only threw for 184 yards, and he had like 120 or 130 in the first quarter. So they basically completely shut down the Cleveland offense after that. They don't even score that last field goal if we don't turn it over on downs trying to get a touchdown late in the game. So that's a very frustrating part of it. Like, my last thing with Darnell Washington before I go full on defense with you here,
Yeah.
is another understated thing in this game. Losing him so early is how incredibly effective the tush push has been for the Steelers this season. When it got to these 4th and 1 and 3rd and 1 situations, it wasn't an option because Darnell was injured. And he's the primary pusher on the play. Now, I have to believe that this week they're going to come up with an alternate plan for that. My hope is that we see a defensive end, maybe an Asezio Tomewo or a Logan Lee, one of these guys that's kind of a back of the roster defensive end who's of similar size. Just make them the pusher. Let's not worry about trying to have Jonnu Smith do it or an offensive lineman. Just put one of the defensive linemen there a little bit more athletic and have some good strength to them and could probably mimic that role pretty well, in my opinion. But back to the defensive side here, when you really look at it, we shut the Cleveland offense down completely. Again, not the most impressive team in the world, obviously, but a far less performance for them than they've had in other weeks. And you're down Deshaun Elliott, Brandon Eccles, James Pierre, TJ Watt.
Yeah.
This is 4 starters on the defense. There's only 11 guys on the field at a time. So, that's a large percentage of your starting defense that was out for this game, and you still shut them down that well. So you got to feel good that if you're able to get TJ back for this game, if you're able to get Pierre and Eccles back for this game too, that's an understated thing because Jalen Ramsey had to play nickel corner a lot in this game. That was a smart move by the Browns, was to play 3 wide receiver as much as they did because it forced Jalen Ramsey into the slot. And now you've got Chuck Clark and Kyle Duggar back there, and they're both strong safeties. They're both better against the run than they are against the pass. So it forces guys onto the field that are not as good of pass defenders into the pass defender role. So you really need Eccles and Pierre to get back and get healthy. Asante Samuel's been fine. I feel like he's been doing a good job out there. But you need a slot corner guy, and Samuels is not a slot corner guy, and neither is Pierre. Eccles is the guy. So
Yeah.
you kind of need him to recover from this groin injury this week so that Jalen Ramsey can play free safety and roam the field and make plays like he has so far this season. So I feel like that's a very underrated thing here, is that the backup nickel is the free safety.
Yeah. If we could get some more sustained drives as well, I think we would have had some better success in this game because the defense having to be out there and play those 3 wide receiver sets so often, I think led to a little bit more of some of their more successful, the Browns' more successful drives. With all the attrition that we faced, with all the starters out, especially in the corner room right now is the one that concerns me the most, as you highlighted, Ramsey's need to shift over. That doesn't bode as well for us. Like, yes, Ramsey can play nickel corner. He's played corner most of his career, but we've seen him come alive at the free safety position. We've highlighted it before on the show. I'm sure we'll talk about it more because I'm assuming he's going to be with us for longer. Do we bring him in on a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal?
I want to say he had like 2 or 3 years left on the deal. So I know he's at least next year, but I think maybe the year after as well.
Yeah, so seeing Ramsey be able to be there for us for safety for a while, the play he's been able to put out there, if we can get the corner room healthy, especially if we can get Eccles back this week, it'll be huge. But yeah, just like some of those, my brain's just kind of bouncing around here. I didn't mean to shift away from the defense again, but I called for 200 yards passing. We got 160. That's not a winning formula, and it wasn't easy. Now Cleveland is one of the better passing defenses in the league, but we should have still been able to get 200. And there were some poor calls that I think should have gone our way, or rather some no calls that I think should have come out as well. And I don't mean for a minute to say that all the no calls were on the Browns. There probably were some on us too. They don't mean as much to me because I don't care as much. I'm not a Browns fan. So the things that stick with me are the things that I was upset about, which are the no calls for us. Sometimes you get a little giddy when you get a no call that goes your way. So I'm sure Browns fans are savoring those. But yeah, just going back to the defense, really thought they played a pretty solid game. And as you highlighted, James, if we don't give up that 4th and 1 play, which is kind of where I was going with that, that back to the passing and back to the offense for a moment. If we don't give that ball over there and we keep that drive going, it's both a momentum shift and they don't get the extra 3 points on the board.
Yeah.
So if we were able to sustain that drive and even put another 3 up on the board, that gets us a little closer. That puts a little more pressure on them. They don't have the short field, and then the defense was still playing pretty lights out and still held them to 3 points on a short field. So it's frustrating because if we could have executed better, if there had been some different play calling, if Aaron had maybe gone through his progressions a bit more instead of being so worried about Garrett, and maybe taken a sack or 2 from Garrett and just let him get the record, which would have still been frustrating because then Browns fans would have held that over us, but at least we might have come out with the win. So it's hard to say how much of that actually went on. It's just what it feels like as a fan viewing the game when you see some sloppy snaps, you see a bunch of passes behind the line that some worked and some didn't. And again, I'm not saying don't do dump offs. I think the dump offs have been actually what won us a number of games when it's the primary read. But when you're just trying to get out of a Garrett sack, sometimes it leads to poor play. And I don't know how much of that went on, but it felt that way for sure.
Yeah, too much of it, unfortunately, in this game. So let's talk front 7 here, defensive line. I felt like these boys held their own. Cam Hayward, once again, just a grown man among boys. It seems like just throwing guys around. Got a tackle for loss in this game, but it seemed like more than 5 total tackles for him. Just another awesome game for him. Derek Harmon, very stout once again. I don't think that there was any negative to Keanu Benton's game in this game either. I know Y.A. Black contributed on a tackle for loss. He didn't get credit for it in the stat column here, so it must have gone to whomever else was in on the play, but I saw him back in the backfield too. Just, I feel like as the season has gone along, it's kind of been up and down for these guys, right? Especially Keanu Benton. He's been hot and cold, hot and cold. He's kind of in a medium streak right now. He's not being a casualty. He's not making any splash plays, so he's due for splash plays next week. Y.A. Black, I felt like, was red hot in the preseason and then kind of not the greatest start in the world. And then as the season's going on, he's doing a much better job against double teams. He's getting penetration. He's getting pressure on the quarterback. He's really developing into that next guy. It feels very much so that he belongs in that starting group now. You know, it's very clear the top 3 defensive linemen, but it feels like Y.A. Black is not that far behind those guys now. And if you would have asked me a month ago, I'd have been like, man, I'm watching him and get blown off the ball and driven 8 yards back on some of these run plays, and that's just not starter caliber. Oh, he's not letting that happen to him anymore.
Yeah.
So nice steps in the right direction from him in this game as well. You got anything on these defensive linemen before we go to linebackers?
Nothing really. Just they seemed to be, other than linebackers, which we'll get to quickly or shortly, but other than that, this was the crew that was laying it out there. They were staunch against the run. They were getting in Shitter's face, mainly in terms of Cam Hayward, but they were letting their presence be known and felt. And again, that penalty on Hayward still just sits so poorly with me because it was such a good rep by him.
And I think it was a third down too, and it was an incomplete pass. So
yeah,
you give them a free first down on a bogus penalty is just brutal.
And they were backed up at their own end zone too, so it brought them out from deep and prevented what should have been a punt back to us. And Cam was playing great that game. That should have been just a QB hit for him that should have just gone negligible and not been a detriment to us. So keep putting that out there, Cam, and hopefully we get some better ref play. But moving to linebackers, Alex Highsmith was tearing it up this game.
Incredible.
Absolutely amazing out there. He had 3 tackles, all of them solo, 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. So can't say enough about Alex. I believe the announcer said his helmet was what ended up bopping up the ball that Jack Sawyer then picked off.
So he made the hit on the quarterback,
Yeah,
which forced the ball into a bad throw, which then bounced off of Logan Lee's helmet.
that's what it was.
And then Jack Sawyer makes the pick off of that and returns it back 27 yards. So, yeah, just a very, very impactful game from Alex Highsmith. Now he's leading the team in sacks with 8.5 on the season. TJ's got 7, Herbig 6.5. In looking like he's the guy this year, right?
Yeah.
Especially the last couple of months, he's had multiple. This is his 3rd game this season of 2 sacks.
Yeah.
And he's just been stout as can be against the run, man. He is immovable over there. He's drawing holding penalties because of how badly he's beating offensive linemen. And then, the interception that Jack Sawyer gets is 100% because of the pressure from Alex Highsmith. You really can't say enough about how well he played in this game, but that's what he's been doing for the last couple months now. So, we got to give him credit, man. This is a guy that as the season is getting more difficult, as the path is getting more narrow, he's stepping up. He's stepping to the front of the line, and he's saying, nope, it's got to go through me, and I'm not moving. and you'll love that about a guy who was thought of as like a secondary piece.
Yeah.
You know, like the primary pieces on the defense were TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and Patrick Queen and Jalen Ramsey. Like those are your primary guys. Alex Highsmith was supposed to be just a complimentary guy. Well, he doesn't look like a complimentary guy anymore. He looks like one of the featured guys on this defense now. So he really deserves all the accolades that he gets, not just from this game, but putting together a real nice season. And
Absolutely.
it's not over yet. He's
not
still
over yet.
One more, man. He's got one more, and he's got a lot to prove. And I won't be surprised if he gets another sack and a half or 2 to get into double digits.
Hoping that he takes down Lamar or Snoop Huntley or whoever it is we have to face next week. Jack Sawyer coming up with that lone interception. Good heads-up play by him. He's been doing pretty well at that. So hopefully Captain Jack can continue to improve. Jeremiah Moon had 1 tackle, but I think it might have been on special teams. And then Nick Herbig with straight zeros across the board. So hoping he can – yeah.
But it's a dropped interception.
Yeah. So Nick Herbig for Jugs Machine this week instead of Chuck Clark, we still got our eye on you, Chuck. Just you hope that he can heat up those joints next week against the Ravens or something to get himself a little more speed back and a little more numbers on this stat sheet here. Do we want to move
not to be too critical on Nick Herbig and hold out hope that he still does play better than this because he is coming off of a hamstring injury. So I'm sure he wasn't quite 100% in this game, but they've got to have more than that out of him this next game. Season's on the line. You need your top guys to play like top guys. So if this next game finishes and Herbig has another stat line like this with like 1 assist or 1 tackle, no turnovers, no sacks, I'm going to be really disappointed with what he's doing in December consistently in his career at this point.
Yeah. Moving to the middle linebacker room, Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen tie with 5 tackles, although Queen had the 1 for loss, so good on you. Jill wanted to give a nod to her boy, said he was flying all around, and he was, so good job on Patrick Queen. And then Malik Harrison also out there getting 4 tackles and 1 tackle for loss, so good on Malik for not being a liability out there completely.
Yeah, and I felt like at one point early in the game they did target him passing just because he's obviously, of those 3 guys, he's the least athletic one. So if you throw it over his head and around him while he's in coverage, that's probably a pretty smart strategy and one that Cleveland employed pretty often early on. But obviously Pittsburgh got that under control as the game went along. So not a bad performance from the middle linebacker room. In that kind of is a direct correlation with what we see with how many yards the Browns had rushing in this game, right? If you only have 70 yards rushing as an entire team, your middle linebackers probably had a good game. So that's exactly what we saw from these guys. Leading tacklers in the game, 3 of the top ones were safeties, and that's an issue typically. Kyle Tucker with 8 tackles on the game, 1 pass deflection. and one interception. Unfortunately, the botched opportunity there where he could have broken up that touchdown early on in the game. Chuck Clark with 5 tackles is probably a pretty impressive output, being that he was only in nickel downs. And then Jalen Ramsey also getting 5 tackles on the game. So your safety's getting lots of tackles and not allowing small plays to turn into big plays. A few too many open guys in zone coverage in this game, in my opinion, specifically early on, that first quarter, really. There was a lot of guys popping open in the middle of the field in between safeties and nickel situations. So got to get that straightened out. But outside of that, another good game for Joey Porter Jr., Asante Samuel Jr. I don't remember any point in time thinking that either one of these guys got dusted. Joey Porter's just had an incredible season this year with just shutting guys down. He hasn't allowed a single touchdown all year, not one. He's putting up elite numbers when it comes to the amount of production that has come against him. It's like less than 400 yards receiving on the entire season, no touchdowns. I think he's in the double digits on pass breakups. It's just been a really impressive season for Joey. And he's really cut down on the penalties. He had no penalties in this game. And it's not the first one. He's had a lot of games this season with no penalties. That was one of our biggest critiques of him in previous seasons, is that he was just getting too many pass interference penalties. He's cleaned that up very well.
Yeah, very exciting to see him come into that leader role in that corner room. And you got to figure that the veteran presence of Ramsey is only going to help him to improve his game, because he can get some information from him and some help and things like that, especially with Ramsey kind of transitioning to safety. You got to figure that he's there was some banter from early camp of Ramsey taking all the CB1 snaps and things like that. So you figure that's going to kind of go away with him being more of a safety this coming year. So to be able to have JPJ just kind of be able to pick Ramsey's brain as they're in the same room and to develop into that CB1 for us is going to be a good thing to have, and very exciting to hopefully see continue to develop.
Absolutely. Let's kick to the special teams before we give our game balls away for this game and talk the injuries as well, of course. The return units, nothing too crazy other than Scotty Miller did a pretty decent job on punt returns. Had a 25-yard punt return, which goes down as the longest punt return for the Steelers on the season, which in my opinion is kind of embarrassing. That means you really didn't have a single good punt return all year. And almost all those punt returns came from Calvin Austin. So a guy that has just been underwhelming on his performance this season is Calvin Austin. And Scotty's saying, sure, give me a couple snaps and I'll outdo him. That's a bad look for Calvin Austin, unfortunately. 2 kick returns on the day, both of them 23 yards. One for Gainwell, one for Warren. Nothing great there. Boswell misses another field goal. That's his 5th miss on the season. A 54-yarder in really inclement weather. That's not 100% on him. Just a very, very windy day. And unfortunately, he just pushed it to the right. And that's going to happen sometimes in an outdoor stadium in late December when it's really cold and really windy. It's tough to do. So I kind of don't hold him too responsible on that, although there's nobody else really to blame but him. But a very, very high difficulty level kick there. All 5 of Corliss Waitman's punts went inside the 20. One of them was pretty short, though. So one of them wasn't the best punt in the world and just barely got past the 20.
Yeah, a good cleanup from him, though, because he had a bit of an off punting game, I believe, last week. It might have been the week before, but good to see him pinning them with inside the 20 with all of his punts. He had a long of 52, so looking better, which is something that you want to see out of your punter, but you also don't want to see him punting 5 times.
Yeah.
So hopefully we see a little less of that this coming week. But James, are you having Jill and Cody's game balls up? Because apparently I do not have them.
Yeah, I've got them up, and I've got some of their comments first here. So we're going to go into Jill's first, and she sent hers in first. Terrible towel on head, as the brand always does here. So
we love to see it.
This is all notes from Jill on her take on the game. Our game ball goes to Cam Hayward. He is playing his heart out game after game. Can't agree with her more on that. She says she's really sad not to be on the show tonight because his convo is about to be so good. But to put it in writing, the game was pathetic to watch. There's no way to catch any momentum when the league doesn't want you to win. Honestly, watching a game like that makes her not want to watch football ever again. Blatant missed calls and blatant BS calls. We talked about that with the offensive pass interference where there's no contact. And
number 52.
and apparently Mike Webster, back from the dead, falls starting on the field because his jersey's been retired for 50 years. And not worked up about that.
Wait, where is it? Where'd it go? There it is. Wait, we're putting it back on.
It's back on, Nick. I like it. The refs were horrible. She says, I hate to be the person who was like, the refs were horrible, but that was very true for this game. They wanted this Week 18 game to matter. Not only that, but you have something very similar happening in Carolina and Tampa Bay. Also, whenever you talk about Garrett, I think I'd rather have him get the sack than lose this game, which is exactly what Nick said. Literally, the sack record doesn't matter. Our chances of playoffs do, though. And I wish we would have taken that more seriously. They can say all they want about a sack record if we finally would have swept them and won in Cleveland. Now those fans will just bark about how we can't win in Cleveland. Would have been nice to win and shut down Garrett, but I guess we can't have cake and eat it too.
We love the thoughts, Jill. Wishing you could join us. Safe travels tonight. She's traveling home from a visit to a class reunion, I believe. So the roads aren't good out there. The visibility was about as much as I wish I had of this game because I didn't want to watch it. But you got Cody's up there, James?
Yeah, and then her final stuff here, she said, shout out to Pat Queen, of course. He was all over the field, and the O-line did well creating some successful blocks. She says, stress on some. Off to Cody now. His game ball goes to Alex Highsmith. Again, very, very deserving Alex Highsmith. He had a hell of a game, and it was completely overshadowed by a horrible performance as an overall team. We can blame the refs all we want, but to be honest, this team played soft and scared the whole game. Yeah. I hope they came out mad against Baltimore, but I don't know what to expect. Probably the most inconsistent I've ever seen this team perform. Proud of our offensive line, some guys for playing tough all the way through. That is the end on Cody's thoughts for the game. Oh, I left the towel on for Cody, too. He's not blonde.
Well, he is a negative Nancy, so at least we had the wig on for that. We love you, Cody, and no, it's right to call this team out for the and Jill's right too. It's not, or Cody mentioned it himself as well. I think it's not all on the refs. The refs played a part, but there was poor play calling. There was not going through the reads, and he mentioned them playing scared, which we alluded to earlier. So yeah, just a frustrating performance all around. I'll let you get some writing in there, James, and then I'll give you mine, I think.
Yeah, and real quick before we do ours, I just want to wrap up the other things. Injuries from the game, Darnell Washington with a broken arm. We touched base on that. And then today the Steelers released Daryl Porter, the cornerback from the practice squad, signed defensive lineman Kyler Baugh. Kyler was on the practice squad earlier in the season, kind of some nose tackle with a little bit of athleticism to him.
Hopefully a good sign for Eccles with Porter being released. So hopefully that's a good sign for Eccles' progress.
Yeah, you typically don't do something like that unless that same room is getting healthier. So that's a good sign for Pierre, Eccles, maybe both. Hopefully both.
Hopefully both is right. The tinfoil hat is back on. We are going over our game balls, even though I don't feel like this team deserves one. But I do want to give a game ball to what I thought was the one bright spot on the offense this week, and that's going to be Pat Freiermuth. I know he wasn't the most targeted. I know he had 2 drops, but the 3 receptions that he had for 63 yards, especially when it came at some of the most crucial points of the game to get you in a position to potentially win the game, even though it was looking unlikely and difficult, and to be at the goal line with about 30 seconds left to take the shots that you need to be able to potentially get that game in. Really the only bright spot for me on the offense this week. You might be able to throw another guy out there like Kenny Gainwell for the effort that he put in, Jalen Warren for the running. But Pat Freiermuth to me was the bright spot on the offense this week.
Well, I'm going to come out of left field on this one, Nick, because I would have probably gone with any of the guys that you guys chose and felt really good about all those. But there's one other guy who I felt had a bright performance in this, and I got to give him credit because low-key he's been very important to this season, especially on a specific play named after him called the Spartan. I'm going Connor Hayward. Connor getting a 29-yard run in this play, the single best running play from this entire game, both sides. And again, his effectiveness in this tush-push formation has just been critical. He's been very good in this formation. I know it was a very minimal role, but based on how minimal his role was, he had a very good game.
Yeah.
And I got to give him credit for it because the kid he's found an opportunity, right? Being the fourth tight end was just not getting him many opportunities on the field. Somehow somebody decided it might be a decent fit for him, and he didn't back down for it, and he has taken every bit of this opportunity to excel as the quarterback, basically, in this tush-push formation. I mean, this was a whole variation we haven't seen yet where they basically faked it back to Rodgers. Rodgers went running off to the left, took a defensive back with him, and then Connor runs to the right and turns it upfield for 29 yards. So I thought, hey, that was an excellent play by Connor. He almost looked quick on the play, which doesn't look quick too often on the field. And I got to shout him out, man. I felt like Connor's making the most of his opportunity, and this being the fourth year of his 4-year rookie deal, he's creating value for himself. So good job, Connor. I think people that have been hating on him on the last couple of years are we've got some positive things to say about him now, and that's nice. That's
Absolutely.
nice because I feel like he's a good kid and he's trying his best out there, and sometimes there's only so much you can do. And when you're a 6 foot, 230-pound tight end, there's only so much you can do. So hats off to him for embracing the role and really excelling at it as well.
I love it, James. I love also how he made the one play call that I thought was actually a good play call look good. So good on him for making Arthur Smith look not totally out of place. But yeah, just like that a lot.
You know what else is a good call, Nick?
Going to the Edinburgh Hotel Bar is a great call.
Absolutely it is. Supporters of Steelers by the Lake podcast include the Edinburgh Hotel Bar, serving a variety of lunch and dinner items every day from their location at 100 Meadville Street in downtown Edinburgh. Information is available at 814-734-5103 or online at edinburghhotelbar.com. The Edinburgh Hotel Bar, where you had me at hotel.
Had to remove the tinfoil hat for that one because that is not a tinfoil hat theory. That is just a known fact. We cannot thank you enough for listening to us here at Crash Outs by the Lake. James has more, though.
One more thing, one last thing. I don't want you guys to think that we've exiled Cody. He is attempting to get back to us at his new location. His internet is not good. So he's trying to get a better internet going on in there so he can actually join us on a regular basis again. So he hasn't given up on you guys. He hasn't forgotten you. And we haven't given up on him either.
Cody, I'll send you my tinfoil hat. Maybe that'll make your signal go a little better. We cannot thank you enough, though, for listening to us here at Crash Outs by the Lake. If you would give us a follow on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It doesn't cost you a thing. Don't forget the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Make James here and the rest of us, including Cody, who's going to be wearing my tinfoil hat soon to help us signal. Very happy. Until next time, these are your hosts, Nick Pretzel and James Strong, signing off.
Peace.